I am going to discuss something with the title Natural Environment and Human Well-Being. Are we better off now than before? The GDP has increased very, very much since the Second World War, 60 years ago, 65 years ago. We are getting older and older, and it seems that we are not really destroying the resource base because prices on natural resources have not increased much. So we shouldn't complain. Seems to be living the best of the world. And this is one opinion that is prevalent among many economists I've met. On the other hand, there are those who are listening to the ecologists who claim that we're worse off. Fresh water is more scarce in several parts of the world. I was spending some time in the beginning of this year, in Venezuela, and there was a lack of water in the reservoirs, which meant that hydropower was not produced in the normal way. So we had blackouts, or the government induced a very odd type of conservation of electricity by closing down parts of cities. Variety of ecosystem services are degraded, and we'll come back to that in a short while, such as ocean fisheries. We are appropriating 40% of the total net primary production in the world. And the question is, what will the consequences be for nature of that appropriation and the possibilities of appropriate similar amounts in the future? And we're then into the issue of sustainable development. And furthermore, in the final point that I'm going to make in this list, climate change is real. I'm going to show you some slides, and those slides I've taken from a book which should be compulsory reading for all environmental and resource economists. Global Change and the Earth System, published 7 years ago by IGBP, National Geosphere Biosphere Program, which, by the way, is located in the offices of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. And it gives you a wonderful, sometimes quite difficult, a wonderful picture on how different parts of the Earth are related to each other, and argues the point very well that we have to look at these issues as a system. We economists do that. We're trained to look at systems. We're doing general equilibrium analysis. We're looking at system and trying to find out the implications of a change there on something there. Or we're looking at partial equilibrium systems. We have taken away some parts we think are not that important, and looking at the consequences of a policy change and how it will be transmitted in this smaller system. We have to apply the same system view when we do resource and environmental analysis. Somehow, sometimes, we, including myself, seem to forget that and look at partial pictures. There's a pollution problem there, another pollution problem there, and not looking at the consequences of these two pollution problems together. Climate change is real. This picture is from this book, Global Change and the Earth System. Kilimanjaro, 1970. Some 8-9 years later, I flew over Kilimanjaro, and it was covered with lots of ice. 2000, 10 years ago, you see the reduction of ice on the peak of Africa's highest mountain, Kilimanjaro. And if you do a simple regression analysis, you'll find out that in 10 years' time, there will be no ice. And that will have great consequences for the people living around Kilimanjaro. Water supply, changes in the hydrology, a complete change in the hydrology of the systems. So they are suffering from that. People living there are suffering from this reduction in the glaciers on the top of Kilimanjaro. So climate change is real. Arctic sea ice is diminishing, which we now know create great problems for a very good friend of ours, the polar bear. The polar bear will possibly disappear from Earth because of the diminishing amount of sea ice. Ocean temperatures at the depth of 700 meters is increasing. And that means that heat is accumulating in the oceans, which will have effects on corals. They will die. They will have effect on fisheries. They will change in a way we don't know yet. It will have impacts on many other aspects of the ocean. This year, 2010, may be the warmest in the history of Earth for the last couple of thousand years. It's not clear yet. First of all, this year hasn't finished yet. Secondly, this year may be beaten by 2007. But anyhow, it shows that something is happening, something very serious is happening with our world. And we all will suffer from that. However, the poor countries will suffer the most. And in particular, parts of Africa will suffer much, much more than we in Sweden. We will have very low damages. We may even benefit because of a longer vegetation period, and we will have more water. The problem is that we may have too much water. But the forecast for Africa is really, really bad. Namely, that the dry areas will be drier, and the wet areas will be wetter. The extremes will grow. So where Rashid comes from, Sudan, they will have water problems because major parts of Sudan is the dry part. Not from where Rashid is coming. He's coming from the southern Sudan, where I believe it's wetter. But further north, Sudan will have problems. They do have enormous problems already, but those are political. But there will be problems from the change in climate. Ethiopia has been suffering for hundreds of years from drought. Now it will become worse. However, some parts, those will be wetter. And those parts are those who are already having enough or even too much of rain. And that may increase the spread of malaria and other diseases, and will create other problems in their countries. So, in general, poor countries will suffer most. And that the irony in this is that the poor countries have not at all contributed to the climate change we are seeing coming to us. The guilty parts are the rich countries, North America, Europe, Japan, now China is coming to join the club of carbon dioxide emitters in a large scale. And unless we are able to get some global agreement on reduction of greenhouse gases, I can just say to Africa, I'm sorry, couldn't help you. I can only say to those countries in South Asia who will suffer, sorry, we can't help you. Because we need a global accord to reduce the emissions sufficiently. It's a rather pessimistic view, but unfortunately, I think it's real. We've seen the Copenhagen meeting, we read in the newspaper, watch TV on what's happening in Cancun, in Yucatan, in Mexico, and it seems impossible to get something together there.